Now we go to section 2, controlling cost. This section is broken down into sessions. The first session, we are going to look at types of costs in an enterprise. There are 2 types of costs we are going to focus on: fixed cost and variable cost. Fixed costs are costs that do not vary in proportion to the quantity of goods produced or consumed. For example, irrespective of the number of loaves of bread you break, the rental cost of the shop or the bakery remains the same, while variable costs are costs that vary in proportion to the quantity of products produced or consumed. Using the bakery example, based on the quantity of loaves of bread produced, the quantity of flour used would vary. The amount of butter would vary. The amount of sugar would vary. These are variable costs. There are also costs we refer to as mixed costs. These are costs that have both fixed and variable cost elements in them. For example, the salary a business pays a marketer is the same every month. However, there might be some commission element added to it, which is dependent on what the marketer sells. The total cost is mixed because the salary the marketer is paid is fixed, while the commission varies based on the quantity sold. This leads us to the second session. What does it really mean to control cost? In order to control cost, we must first identify controllable costs and uncontrollable costs. What do you do about controllable costs after you have identified them? We reduce them. What do you do about uncontrollable costs after you have identified them? You report them. Controllable costs are costs that can be reduced by being more effective at what you do, trying to control and save cost. While uncontrollable costs are costs that management cannot directly control due to the involvement of some other people. For example, the exchange. This leads us to the next section, cost standards and cost variances. What do we mean by a standard cost? This is a predetermined cost which is achieved by certain standards related to particular circumstances or conditions of work. Standards should be related to a specific situation or scenario. For example, the standard cost for lunch should depend on the quantity of the meal. The advantages of understanding and identifying standard cost is that it helps to estimate the cost for various items and also basic for cost variance analysis. Companies should establish standards for all costs and should begin with uncontrollable costs. For example, you can set a tariff for transportation in your business. These are standard costs. Based on the location, there's a standard tariff that is paid. This helps to watch and control cost. Analysis of cost variances. In order to control cost, we must first be able to analyze what causes the difference between the standard cost we have set as an organization and the actual cost we have incurred. The difference between the standard cost and the actual cost is referred to as cost variances. To control the cost, we must identify what the causes of these variances are. In order to analyze the variances, we first must compare the actual cost and the standard cost. Secondly, we identify if the variance is adverse or variable. An adverse variance is when the actual costs incurred exceeds the standard cost, while a favorable variance is when the standard cost exceeds the actual cost. We always want a favorable variance. But where you have an adverse variance, you need to identify the main causes of the adverse variance and take corrective steps to remedy the situation. There are other causes of cost variances. An example, when we look at the fishbone diagram, in usage of material, the method of usage, the competence of the personnel or the man that is using the material, and the machine itself. These three aspects, usage, method, man and machine, can lead to wastage and thus increase in cost. If the poor quality of material is used or your suppliers are unreliable, then your cost will be high. When the staff or used is not competent, there will be a lot of wastage. If the machine has poor maintenance, then the production will be poor. These are some of the causes of cost variances. Let's take a look at how cost information and decisions can help us to control cost. Cost information is required for any important management decision. In order to control cost, you need cost information to make the right cost controlling decisions. Cost information is required for any important management decision. Examples are pricing decisions, what price to sell your product, produce or purchase decision. Do we produce our raw materials or we purchase them? Cost information is also required for closure decisions when negotiations takes place. All these are very important to make the right decisions in setting your selling price and controlling your cost. Section 4. Controlling cost system. Controlling cost system has to do with, first of all, cost collection, followed by cost analysis, which entails breaking down the costs that have been collected to understand the makeup of the cost items, followed next by controlling cost. After you've analyzed the cost, this would help you to break down and then control the cost in order to achieve optimum efficiency. Controlling cost system has two major components: cost centers and cost codes. A cost center is defined as a location where all costs are collected. Please note that a cost center is also considered as a responsibility center. There are other centers within a company: revenue center, profit center, investment center. It is not necessary to establish cost centers for all departments and staff members. The decision to establish a cost center depends on the purpose of the enterprise. However, there are other centers within a company. Examples include revenue center, profit center, investment center, and many more. It is not necessary to establish cost centers for all departments and staff members. The decision to establish a cost center depends on the purpose of the enterprise. What benefits do we stand to gain by establishing cost centers? They include: number one, it's easier to gather cost information from cost centers. Number two, it provides quick cost information from different divisions and also makes it better to control costs incurred in various divisions. Let's see how we can manage and control costs in 4 easy steps. Step 1. Identify the cost center. Step 2. Gather costs into centers. Step 3. Analyze costs for management. Step 4. Control costs through cost centers. Let's take a look at step 1. Step 1. Identify cost centers. Select cost centers as per management requirements. This also can be broken down into steps. The first step is to identify costs that need to be controlled. This has to do with selection of the cost center. Identify uncontrollable costs that the enterprise needs to control. Identify divisions that relate to the cost. And select cost center among divisions that relate to the cost. In order to control material cost, 3 departments are very crucial: purchasing, receiving, and storage departments. These are key cost centers you need to identify in order to control material cost. We next look at controlling labor cost. The cost center with regard to labor cost are staff, department, and time. Depending on the type of business you run, you'll be able to control your labor cost looking at the staff, department, and time. Next, we look at controlling general cost. In order to control general cost, you need to identify what constitutes general cost. This can also be called overhead cost. When you have identified all these costs that are general to all departments, then you identify the allocation base through which you would allot cost to each department. In order to achieve this, you need to collect data on the allocation base and lastly allocate the overhead cost amongst the respective departments. Overhead costs are different from specific costs because they cut across various departments, and identifying a good basis of allocation would be very helpful. We now move on to Section 5, create cost consciousness. Cost consciousness means to consider the company's money as one's own money. Every member of staff has to treat the company's money, spending it as if it were their own, taking ownership. You can only reach high performance with the support of your staff. No one can do it alone. Companies are very much interested in creating a cost-conscious environment. When every member of the team is cost-conscious, the cost-controlling mechanism would work much better.